Hi there, and welcome to the Pecha Kucha session. My name is Amina Dib, and I'm the Manager of Government and Stakeholder Relations at RESCON. Today I'll be moderating the session, which features presentations from Mary Ellen Bench, Counsel at Denton's, Chris Hornberg, the Director of the City of Toronto's Concept to Keys Office, and Paul Smetanen, the Executive Director of CanSEA. Each speaker will have about 6.5 minutes to make a presentation. We'll then have time to take questions from the audience. The presentations are all pre-recorded, so let's let it roll.
Hi, I'm Mary Ellen Bench. I'm counsel at Denton's, and I'm here to talk about affordable housing. Affordability is not new. It's a worldwide problem, and it's a critical concern in today's world. Canada's first subsidized affordable housing project was led by the City of Toronto in 1948, Regent Park as we know it, and it had over 2,000 units in it. Canada's had a number of policies for affordable housing, and since the Great Depression, the need for government support to make housing affordable has been acknowledged. But more recently, the focus has shifted to incenting private developers and to legislative requirements on development as well. It's a mix of a carrot and a stick approach. So affordable for who is the primary question that has to be answered. Defining affordable has traditionally been based on a percentage of gross income. This approach doesn't distinguish between what is attainable for moderate income earners and what is affordable to those with very low incomes or living below the poverty line. Toronto and other municipalities are now using a formula based on a percentage market rent across the city. As you can see, it's complicated. The Ontario Provincial Planners Institute in 2001 made it clear that deeply affordable housing was a problem that all levels of government had to help with. Recognizing that municipalities do not have cash, OPPI raised the issue of dealing with affordability through planning tools and the municipal input that could happen there. Canada's national housing strategy focused on affordable housing until the 1980s, when it was overhauled, when interest rates went sky high. Less attention was paid to affordable at that time, but recently Canada's national housing strategy has reintroduced federal support for affordable housing. The Association of Municipalities of Ontario is the voice of municipalities, and in 2019, in its report on affordable housing, reminded us that municipalities need flexible tools. They saw the role of municipalities in updating planning documents, in providing for e-permitting, and for accepting a planning permit system as key to assisting with this. A planning permit system is something the province has been trying to get municipalities to use for a long time. They also saw inclusionary zoning as having great potential, despite not being a panacea. The province has a role to share in this in terms of sharing best management practices with municipalities and developers have a role in terms of improving the complete application submissions made and in ensuring timely resubmissions and reviews. We hear a lot about inclusionary zoning these days. Inclusionary zoning enables municipalities to demand affordable housing units when reviewing new developments, rather than negotiate them on a site-by-site basis. Voluntary programs become mandatory requirements in this world. Toronto's inclusionary zoning is intended to increase the supply of affordable housing in mixed-use communities for low to moderate income households. The focus is around major transit station areas and the downtown. And as the map shows, there are 3 market areas distinguished by different colors that are focused on for Toronto. Toronto area rates for 2022 are expected to be between 5 and 10% of a condominium development. And by the year 2030, we'll be up to 22% in certain zones. Permission for off-site provision of affordable units is only going to be allowed in limited situations. BUILD has expressed concerns with the Toronto inclusionary bylaw. Unlike other municipalities in North America, BUILD says, Toronto has chosen not to provide offsets or incentives for new inclusionary zoning housing units, and the cost impact is significant. So why is the focus on condominium development in Toronto's inclusionary zoning and not on purpose-built rental units? Arguments about diversifying occupants of buildings and who will pay for cost increases that are not predictable need to be met. If rents for certain units are frozen, the inclusionary zoning ones, and repairs are needed, what kind of burden does that place on the moderate income owners that occupy the rest of the building? And could that tip them over the edge of affordability? It's important to remember as well that there are other models for inclusionary zoning. New York, Chicago, Miami, Minneapolis, San Francisco are some communities that have developed other models that have one thing in common, which is government support. It's important to remember as well that inclusionary zoning is just one of several available tools. The Ontario Housing Affordability Task Force released its report recently and focused on a number of those tools. Streamlining municipal planning processes, streamlining the appeal processes through the OLT are some of those. There are several recommendations for as-of-right approvals near transit and in underutilized commercial areas. And unlimited height and density near TOCs are also recommended. I think the as-of-right approvals and the unlimited height and density can achieve a lot. In terms of the latter, remember the city of Mississauga has had unlimited height and density in its downtown core for over 20 years and has not moved to change it. So it's not as bad as some might suggest. Partnerships are key. The town of Newmarket recently entered into an innovative agreement with the developer to provide affordable housing units, with some of those units focused on seniors, and also a focus on new technology to assist with climate change, as we all have to remember that affordable is only one of many challenges that we have to work through. And to end where we started, Regent Park today is much different and a great success story because of the partnerships created between the private and public sector.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Hornberg, and I'm the director for the Concept to Keys program. First, I want to say thank you very much for inviting me to speak. I'm really excited to be here today and to share more about the program. My goal today is to walk people through why C2K was created, our goals and what we're trying to achieve, and some things to watch out for in 2022. For some background, almost everything we do comes from the end-to-end review, which was originally led by city planning. However, it's really difficult for city planning to lead the entire development review process, as they depend on all the other commenting partners as well. So to that end, I'm going to focus in on accountability a lot and talk more about the importance of reporting directly to the city manager. Here's an overview of our reporting structure and how C2K is set up. And critically, our accountability, like I said, is with the city manager, which in general is overseen by an executive steering committee. Of course, we still want to collaborate with all the leads and subject matter experts, but we draw our authority from outside the process, which is important from a transformational perspective. Here's a roadmap of the formation of the office. You can see the end-to-end review right at the beginning, our major milestone in becoming a permanent office at the end of 2021, and then in the last row, what we plan on doing in 2022. And the largest item there is the district rollout, which I'm going to touch upon later, which will see C2K have a major presence across the entire city. And here's what we're trying to fix. And I'm going to focus in on some of these items. You can see there the adversarial process between the city and applicants. Timelines is the very obvious one. Inconsistent use of technology, and the biggest of all is customer service. For C2K, customers are everyone. That's staff, applicants, and politicians. And this notion is again rooted in accountability. Customer service and culture are also inherently connected. And we know both staff and applicants are frustrated. That's why we're here, and we're trying to progress from a race to the bottom, where I've heard planners refer to themselves as professional apologists for developers, to one where everyone feels valued. So we aren't tackling culture directly, we're addressing the underlying drivers of culture itself. For applicants, it's really easy to understand what they want. They want faster approvals. You don't need an office like C2K to be able to figure that out. But what does staff want? For them, it's resourcing, high vacancy rates, which results in a more stressful workload, and attracting staff has been difficult in this market. So when we do our customer journey mapping, we looked at both applicants and staff, and we weren't surprised to see that a lot of the highs and lows for individuals were aligned. And unfortunately, they were largely aligned with the fact that the experience for both was very negative throughout almost the entire process. Luckily for us, that meant there was lots of opportunities for improvement. And with all those areas for improvement, we adopted a very agile change model. Everything we do is iterative, and we purposely are aiming for a B+, and then we work together to get to the A. We are able to quickly launch new programs and policies, knowing they might not be perfect, and then iterate to improve them, which allows for rapid changes and quick incorporation of feedback from staff and industry. And mending relationships is one of the key goals of C2K. And having industry and staff be part of the change, letting them see behind the scenes has been fantastic. We are honest about timelines. We provide feedback loops where we say what feedback we will incorporate and what we won't, and critically when it can be expected. And most importantly, we test solutions with them. We take an outside-in approach. In terms of our structure and some of the things the team is working on, we have developed a new one-window issues team. That means any issues with a development anywhere in the city, we have a dedicated team of staff looking to coordinate responses. They won't necessarily give you the answer you want, but they will get you an answer, yes or no, in a quick and transparent manner. We also have a team dedicated to business improvement. This team works on a variety of process improvements and special projects. Early successes include mandatory pre-application consultation, which was just recently passed by council. It comes into effect November of this year. They also lead a monthly industry working group as just one example of a feedback mechanism. We also have an operational arm. And so what the strategy and business improvement team creates, this team tests it. A great example of something they have done is streamlined commenting. Whereas previous to C2K, files were sent sequentially to some of the commenting partners, they now receive them at the same time. An obvious but important change that has already resulted in improved timelines. Our other operational arm is the Priority Development Review Stream. This team is meant to accelerate the highest priority developments for the city, which council has deemed as affordable housing. To date, they have improved review timelines from an average of 8 to 11 weeks per circulation down to 3 to 5, which is a massive success on some of the city's toughest files. Finally, we have a team dedicated to customer experience and technology. Right now, we are in the middle of procurement for a new file circulation tool, and we already launched an in-house city-made application portal. So we are working to have a user-friendly digital process that will truly serve customers from end to end. Here's our 2022 work plan, and it's purposely ambitious. For me, and thinking back to accountability, performance management aspect in the second box is one of 2 key deliverables. And through a new technology, we're going to have real-time data on where files are stuck and for how long. That will really drive a new way of working in the city. The second item I touched upon in the intro is the rollout of C2K into the other districts. So here's our high-level roadmap for performance management. Critically, we need to jointly develop these KPIs with divisions responsible for review and with the industry to make sure the reporting is meaningful. What I'm most excited about, however, is the fact that these KPIs won't require manual data manipulation. They'll be automatic and tied directly to file circulation. And here's the general rollout for 2022. And we're working through many of the logistics now. We're currently in Etobicoke, York, and we work to ensure sufficient staffing there. Using lessons learned, we plan on doing the same in all the other districts, starting in North York and Scarborough. And finally, we're thinking of splitting the downtown core into separate districts, given how large the volume is. I've never spoke to a developer that wouldn't agree to pay more for more certainty in the process and timelines. So why do we even have an issue in the first place? Well, I think we're only ever as fast as the slowest commenting partner, and that can change from file to file and district to district. So we need to have an office like ours that is eager to take on the joint accountability and challenge improving customer service and experience. I want to thank the organizers for putting on this event and the opportunity to present here today. This is a really important conversation, not just for the city. I've spoken with many municipal colleagues undertaking similar processes throughout the country. I look forward to answering any questions, and I'm always happy to connect offline. My contact information is there. Thank you very much.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Paul Smettinen, and together we'll be looking at some systemic issues within the residential housing market. The kinds of issues that I'm referring to is the distribution of bedrooms and the size of homes being built. You could call them dislocations, depending upon your point of view, but these issues have been growing over the past 20 years. And some analysis of pandemic real estate sales has suggested that the market is trying to maneuver around these issues, but very slowly and at a price. When I use the term overhoused, I'm referring to people who live in homes that are larger than what they need in terms of bedrooms, and the opposite's true when I use the term underhoused. Ontario is a remarkably overhoused market. 57% of the population is overhoused, which represents 63% of all homes in the province. And there are over 4 million excess bedrooms that aren't being used. However, on the other side of that barbell are people who are underhoused, which represents about 13% of the population across the province, but it's almost 1 in 5 or 18% of the GTA. And in the province, there's about 600,000 bedrooms that would be required to remedy the situation, and about 460,000 bedrooms in the GTHA alone. Looking at the City of Toronto, underhousing is driven primarily by apartments. Downtown core shows very little underhousing given the predominance of single bedroom units. But overhousing is primarily due to singles and semi-detached. And as you can see here, the majority of the city is overhoused. New bedrooms constructed have been falling over the last 20 years. When we look at what is to alleviate the shortage of bedrooms for a significant part of the population, we find that the province has been producing fewer and fewer bedrooms over time. And in fact is 30% less than what was being produced 15 years ago. And that is about 60,000 bedrooms per annum, which is significant. Yet immigration is expected to increase the demand for bedrooms to over 190,000 per annum, just in Ontario alone. Bedrooms per dwelling are down. The average number of bedrooms per dwelling was generally falling since the early 2000s. By about 8% since the early 2000s, and the recent bedroom growth is below the population growth, or bedrooms constructed is below population growth. It used to be 1.4 bedrooms for every new entrant into the province, but now it's only 0.8 of a bedroom for every new entrant. So bedrooms and population growth are mismatched, and when you dig a little bit deeper, you see that the boom in smaller dwellings has been produced. So for instance, 16% of new dwellings 15, 20 years ago were dwellings under the size of 1,000 square feet. Now it's 40%. Yet larger homes over 3,000 square feet are increasing by about 20% from 8% of the total market to 10%. Apartments on average are getting smaller by about 8%. And yet singles and semi-detached have been getting bigger by about 12%. Let's have a quick look at what's happening outside the GTHA, which is a good example of how housing is getting larger for those who can afford it. And this is the Niagara region, which is dominated by single detached housing. There, the square feet of house per person has grown significantly, up to almost 50%. For some dwellings. Also notice how the distribution of housing sizes being built has shifted to the right, which essentially means that houses are getting much larger, but are not necessarily producing as many bedrooms as what we had experienced 20 years ago. Apartments in Niagara have not materially changed in size, and there is definitely the beginning of an uneven shift of density that's occurring, something in which the City of Toronto has been very, very familiar with over the past couple of decades. As you can see in this graph, anything that looks brown and yellow is parts of the city that's decreased in density over the last 20 years, whereas the dark purples has been the increase in density and population over the past 20 years. Surprisingly, the City of Toronto has been growing, but in terms of area, it's actually been shrinking in population. Then we have pandemic factors such as work from home. And if we look at the City of Toronto, working from home increased by about threefold during the pandemic. And we expect that it will systematically stay at around that 2 times pre-pandemic levels. This increases the demand for bedrooms, which has increased the demand for bedrooms by about 100,000 in the City of Toronto, up to about 560,000 bedrooms that are required for people who are unsuitably housed, which is 3 times more the rate of the province of Ontario. And yet you have overhousing within the city of to the tune of about 1.7 million excess bedrooms. Apartments getting smaller, houses are getting larger. And so the problem is exacerbating itself. However, when we look at the secondary market and real estate activity that was occurring over the pandemic, yes, prices have increased, volumes have increased. But we've seen evidence of right sizing, where people who live in a home that's too small for them purchasing a home that is suitable for them, or people who are living in a home that's too large for them, downsizing to a home that is smaller for them. We are seeing this, but it's marginal. But we're also seeing this at a cost, whereas you've got 20% increase in prices, but you've got a very marginal redistribution of bedrooms within the city. Thank you very much, and we will look forward to your questions shortly.
Thanks, Paul, Chris, and Mary. We'll now get to a couple questions. The first one is actually for myself. So Chris, you mentioned during your presentation the iterative nature of the process for launching programs and policies under C2K. So what's one thing that you learned from the beginning stages that your team has now improved and changed at the current stages?
Sure, thanks for the question, Amina. So I'd say a really obvious one for us, I mentioned in the presentation, was that application and submission tool. That was the, when the pandemic happened, there was obviously a big push to go digital because you weren't really allowed to go to City Hall to drop off files. And so what we did is we collaborated with industry in particular, and we actually got them to test out, a new digital tool. They gave us direct feedback. And sometimes there's really small things like a notes panel was missing. But because we got that feedback from them, we were able to kind of have a timeline for when we could expect to include that. And we continue to do that with them. We continue to work with them because now we've gone live as of December 6th. All application types now use that internal portal developed by city staff. And we continue to work with industry through monthly industry working groups where they can give us feedback, and then we give them timelines on when they can expect to see those implemented.
Thanks, Chris. Paul, I know you're a data guy, but I'm going to put you on the spot here. I don't think you said it explicitly, but you're kind of alluding when you're talking about the houses, single-family homes getting bigger and high-rises getting smaller in terms of bedrooms, the missing middle. If you were a policy guy and not a data guy, or maybe both policy and data, how would you, what would be, if there was one top thing you would do to kind of create more of a balance, what would it be, given the data that you've presented with us?
Well, in terms of the needs of bedrooms within the province, it's we have to somehow try and incentivize or penalize residents to be able to give up their empty bedrooms, because clearly there's a significant part of the community that's living in oversized housing. And when you think of 4 million bedrooms that are, considered to be unused according to common sense rules of the National Occupancy Standard. That's about 20 years worth of construction. So any policy that sort of allows empty nesters in order to be able to right-size themselves into, you know, a house that fits their particular needs would be, you know, I consider would be a good policy. And, you know, in our opinion, it would be the missing middle, you know, because a lot of people who are, you know, again, empty nesters, or is the easy example, they've got no better place to be. They'd like to stay in the communities that they're in. We've done surveys. You know, there is a sort of significant intention to be able to right-size, but the product is just simply not available in the market. The market's gone big and it's gone small, and it's been doing that for 15 to 18 years.
Thanks, Paul. And then we have one question from the audience, but just to flag that we're running out of time. So Chris, in your response, if you could make it short and sweet, but what is the city's end-to-end goal for rezoning submission to building permits issued on a C2K project?
Sure, and thanks very much for the question. So just kind of two things. So first, you know, I don't want to call it a C2K file, right, or a C2K project. Fundamentally, the way you can look at concept of keys is that we are an augment to the existing divisional, you know, commenting partners that already review the files. We're here to add that project management element, you know, transform technologies, those types of things, to hopefully speed up and accelerate development review. We're not really at the point where we could say, you know, we're going to, you know, finish something within 6 months or 8 months. The whole point of that iteration is to be able to get there. And we have the tools coming that will enable us to do that. In particular, file circulation, I talked about that during my presentation. It's going to give us real-time data on where applications get stuck and timelines, and then that'll allow us to drill down and perhaps into specific units or reach out to specific developers where we can see that, you know, challenges are happening. So it's hard to answer the question on a, you know, direct, you know, we can expect 6 months, but rest assured that's something that we're working towards.
Okay, and hopefully maybe like someone can answer this within 20 seconds, but what strategies can municipal governments put in place to hire, retain, and maintain job satisfaction for planners and building officials? Any ideas why high vacancy rates are not being more seriously addressed by municipalities? So 20 seconds or less.
We'll leave that up to Chris.
So with 15 seconds, look, I do think that municipalities are taking it seriously. But there are budget constraints that we have to deal with. You know, I alluded to that in my presentation to a certain extent, right? Where I've never met a developer that wasn't willing to pay a little bit more for certainty and timelines. I think we need to harness that a little bit more, but I also think we need to show the development community that if they pay more, here's what they can expect to get. So it's probably just a little bit of a right sizing, but I do think municipalities are taking it seriously, and hopefully that, you know, we'll do a better job in the future on those vacancy rates.
Okay, so we're now at the end of our session. We hope you enjoyed the Pecha Kucha session. Thank you to Chris, Paul, and Mary, and for those of you who asked questions from the audience. We'll now ask everyone to move to the next segments to hear from the opposition leaders. First, Andrea Horvath, then Stephen Del Duca, and finally Mike Schreiner. For the local Ontario audience, these three leaders will be familiar to you, and for others, please check the bios of each leader in Whova. Ontario will be having an election in 3 months, and we look forward to hearing the details on the party platforms pertaining to housing. To access each opposition leader session, you will need to enter each session separately. Thank you, everyone.